What's up, Getty Club? Today I'm going to be tier ranking the songs from the entire Frozen franchise. That's Frozen 1 and 2, plus Frozen Fever and Olaf's Frozen Adventure. Got a lot of songs to get through, so let's dive right in, starting with Frozen 1. Alright, so I'm starting off with Frozen Heart. Very simple, but a great way to start off the movie. Really gets you hooked right away. Can't go too high with it though. Gonna put it in B tier. Next up is Do You Want to Build a Snowman? It's a very important sequence for character building and story background. It's gonna get held back from being a bit higher tier just because it's a fairly straightforward and basic song. That being said, it does cover a range of emotions quite well, but it's just not super memorable to me. That's why it's also staying down on the B tier. Next up is For the First Time in Forever. It's just a really solid song, filled with hope, very uplifting, very catchy. That's why it's going up on the A tier. Next we have Love Is an Open Door. It's a great sing-along song with some absolutely spot-on one-liners. That's why it too is going up on the A tier. Next up is The One, The Only, Let It Go. Now I actually worked at Disney when Frozen was peaking, so I heard this song way too much, so it's not really my thing at this point, but it's undeniably, absolutely iconic. This is the song that rocked the whole world, so it has to be S tier. Next up is Reindeer Are Better Than People. It's a funny little song, but it doesn't have a ton going on, and it's kind of restrictive on Jonathan Groff. I think you need to cut him loose in that first movie. Let him really show what he's got. That's why it's going down on the C tier. Next is In Summer. A bit funny, but it just didn't really do it for me. I know that it's catchy, I know that it's just a fun little comic relief for Olaf, but just not my song. Also C tier. Next up is For the First Time in Forever, Reprise. It's a great use of a reprise, brings back the familiar melody, but adds a ton to the story. That's why it's up on the B tier. Next we have Fixer Upper, pretty much just a chance to show off the personalities of the trolls and to fill in Kristoff's background a bit, but it's not particularly necessary to the story, not all that catchy. I'm sorry trolls, but C tier. And finally we have Vuli. I hope I'm saying that right, I'm not honestly sure. But this song just brings the hype, it brings the wonder, it gets you stoked. It's undeniably A tier. Alright, moving on to Frozen Fever. The short film only has one song called Making Today a Perfect Day. Honestly, not particularly memorable or quite necessary to the franchise, just a little bit of extra content. I really can't put this higher than D tier. Moving on to Olaf's Frozen Adventure, the Christmas short film. We'll start off with That Time of Year. I am admittedly super biased because I used to work guest flow, which is basically crowd control in Disney's Hollywood studios. And during the holiday season, they would play a short version of this on Sunset Boulevard. So I have some very fond, nostalgic memories of this song. That's why it's so high for me, even though it's a simple and kind of random song. I am very curious, however, to know why on YouTube this has a ton of dislikes and the comments are disabled. They must have been incredibly toxic. That's the only reason I can imagine they turned those off. I'm guessing maybe it's because people just really dislike the fact that it was really long for a short, which I believe they played before Coco in theaters, and people were just kind of caught off guard. But for me, it's up on the B tier. Next up we go to Ring in the Season. It's a definite first time in forever vibe, which is kind of the whole point of the song. It really captures that same kind of hopefulness and excitement, just not quite the catchiness. Interestingly enough though, this song doesn't seem to catch the online hate that time of year gets. For me, this one's another B tier. Next up is The Ballad of Flemingrad. Not really catchy, not really funny, not really impressive in any way, it's just kinda there. That's why it is our second D tier. Now to the That Time of Year reprise. This one is even higher than the original because I love the irony of Olaf being sad and singing that he didn't mean to let people down during a short film which many people felt upset and let down about. That is why I'm putting this one up on A tier. Next is Ring in the Season reprise, which is just not self-contained enough to stand on its own like some of the other reprises are. That is why it is down on D tier. And finally we have When We're Together. It is a very solid Christmas ballad. Not the catchiest song in the world, but definitely holds its own. It brings the emotion. It's kind of the main star song of Olaf's Frozen Adventure, and it has really grown over me over the years. A tier. And finally we get to Frozen 2. Starting off with All Is Found, which I found to be a fantastic change of feel. in comparison to most of the franchise. It has a darker, mysterious vibe that I really love, which is why I'm putting it up on A tier. Next up is Some Things Never Change. It was a really nice start to the movie to reintroduce everyone, very catchy with some good sing-along ability, but nothing super special, that's why it is on B tier. Next up we have Into the Unknown. I know this is the big time single from this movie, but it just doesn't land for me nearly as effectively as most of the other songs from Frozen 2. It's good, it's just not great, that's why it too is on the B tier. Next up is When I Am Older. Definitely a nice concentrated dose of funny for Olaf, with interesting commentary on growing up, but it's not really a powerhouse, so again, B tier. Next up we have Reindeer Are Better Than People Continued. It's almost not fair to rate. Similarly to the Rain in the Season reprise, it's just not self-contained, that's why it's down on D tier. Moving on to Lost in the Woods, one of the best sing-along songs out there, a great emotional insight into Kristoff, and finally a superb opportunity to hear Jonathan Groff flex his vocal talent. Undeniably S tier. Next up is The Next Right Thing. I personally think this song is super overlooked. The raw emotion packed into it gives me goosebumps every single time I hear it. S tier. Last but certainly not least, Show Yourself. I know this song didn't land for some people, but for me it landed perfectly. It was a spectacular emotional apex to the journey Elsa has been on since the franchise began. Frozen 2 absolutely bringing the heat, another S tier. So there is my Frozen franchise tier list. Let me know what you would change on your tier list in the comments below. Thanks for watching, and until next time, hoist the colors.